regarding the psychology aspect, but this brings me to like a great article I read that you wrote, or that I believe you sent it over to me. And you used the analogy of a well-guarded, fortified house in relation to cybersecurity threats. Can you please like tell the viewers more about that analogy you made?
Sure. Yeah, 100%. So imagine you live in a house. It's got unbreakable doors, unbreakable windows, locks, unbreakable walls. That amazing protection that you're surrounded by is going to do you little good if you open the door every time somebody knocks on the door, and you listen to whatever story they tell you, and you just keep opening that door, or maybe even you never close it to begin with. And so that really speaks to something that you and I were touching on beforehand, and that is we cannot afford to be so naive to think that a single piece of technology is going to protect us. We really have to take our protection in our own hands and really understand good awareness, good cyber hygiene. And don't get me wrong, I love technology. We do need to be able to automate our response. Of course, we need technology to protect us, but we just can't be so naive to think that we now don't need to be responsible. I actually came up with that analogy because I was at a high school and I was talking about cybersecurity awareness, and this young gentleman came up to me and he goes, you know, Danny, I appreciate you coming out here, but I really don't need any help. I got this figured out. And I was like, yeah, wow, all right. Well, I've been doing this for 20 years and I don't know anyone that's got it figured out. So tell me, like, what's your secret? And he's like, I've got an iPhone and I've got a Mac at home. And I think we both know that they can't get hacked. So I don't need to worry about any of your lessons. And I was like, yeah, so that's really wrong. And by the way, I love Apple. I have an iPhone, but yeah, that's a lie. They are certainly susceptible to being breached, just like any technology is. But let's pretend that they're not. Let's pretend it was amazing. How is it going to help you when you are willfully being tricked to willfully put your information out there, right? Mm-hmm. Or when you're willfully putting too much on Facebook or too much on Instagram or what have you, and someone, in some cases, doesn't even need to actually hack you. They just Google your name and really pull off what you've already freely put up there, right? Yeah. So that's really, I think we need to take a step back and understand technology. Of course, it's necessary. Of course, it has its place. Apple, of course, is a great company, but we cannot rely on somebody to protect us. We really need to know the basics and protect ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw your video where you described this situation, and I smiled because, you know what, I used to think the exact same thing. Like, I don't know where this whole theory came about that, if you have a Mac, if you have an iPhone, you're good. It's all good. You're not a threat. You're not at risk of getting hacked or anything of that sort. I used to believe that as well. So folks, look, you got to question all these things that you might be hearing about, right? And it's a great point. And I remember seeing like this YouTube prank video where this guy was basically going around and he was just going up to people and saying, "Hey, what's your password?" And people were just like, "Have you seen that?"
I did.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example, right? Like a complete stranger comes up,
yeah,
and you're caught totally off guard, and you just give up the password, right? And it's not to say that those people were foolish or something of that sort. It's just that element of surprise and I guess some psychology there.
A little bit of surprise, a little bit of psychology.
Yeah.
And someone can argue, well, that guy had a camera, so maybe they want to be on TV and they were playing along. You can argue that, but we do see those kind of scams every day. And the really popular one in Canada was the CRA scam. Hey, you're going to be in handcuffs within the hour. And sometimes when we talk about that, sometimes we might be quick to almost poke fun at those people, right? Like, how could you fall for that? You're being asked to pay the CRA on an Apple ID gift card. Like, why on earth would the CRA want to be paid like that, right? But what we need to understand, though, is when you're in that emotional state, it's not a question of logic because you're not thinking logically. So you can say, logically, how could you fall for that? Well, they weren't thinking with logic. They were thinking with emotion. That's how they fell for it. And maybe you might think, we might think, well, I wouldn't fall for that. But that's only because our emotional trigger point wasn't hit. But trust me, when it's hit, holy cow, it really gets hard to avoid. That's why we really need to take that 10 seconds, take a deep breath before we do anything.